are just crazy. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I don't know what happened, you know. But anyways, everybody, this is Steve Skulls. He's the Bigfoot detective out there. We're finally going to show going here, and Steve has a lot of interesting things he does in the field. I'll show you guys a little bit of clip of Steve in the field.
This was standing right to the right of the telephone pole.
Okay.
And it was standing literally. I'm going to put the bottom edge of the beam, how tall it was off the ground, about there. And I could see the eyes, and then I just turned around. I could just see it move back, and then it turned around up again in there, looking back down this way, and then it turned around again and proceeded.
Yeah, you're never going to cut them off. You're never going to cut them off, Steve. So.
You have Amy and Stacy at the fire. All right, send them on out. I'm going to post them due north of our location.
Seeing if we see any imprints here.
We're on our way out.
What's this?
Amy or Stacy, do you have a radio?
Yeah, we're on our way out.
Yeah, he said it crossed right across. So.
Step up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Unless right there.
Okay, team one up there.
Look at,
Look at that.
No.
OP1.
Look at that.
front.
Make sure your lights are out. No white light, no red light, no nothing. Just go dark.
Right here.
That looks.
Roger, I'm OP1.
Right here's a ledge where you just get
Affirmative.
locked up, you guys.
Roger that. We're looking for sign right now, and I think we might have
You could have just walked right up here,
we
though.
might have
It's a rock.
seen a scrape here, but I'm not
Unless
sure.
that's a print. You might want to have safety
Roger that. Let's just hunker down and look,
That looks
listen, and
fresh.
feel.
Yeah, it does.
And
Looks like it just fell.
kill your lights. We're going to try something.
Steve, that was all you, buddy.
And there you have it.
You know, I got to ask you though.
Sure.
What got you into investigating Bigfoot?
Well, by profession, I'm a professional investigator. I'm a trained forensic interviewer. I got a hold of this book. A friend recommended to me. It was about Bigfoot sightings that were actually local to me within a couple of hours to me. So it came to the point where it was like, I bet you this is all a bunch of baloney. And as I started to interview different people, such as the police officers that had the sightings, I talked to one firefighter at a sighting. There was a couple of field scientists that have sightings, and watching their physical reaction, engaging them through my forensic interviewing techniques, they were telling the truth. They saw something they thought was Bigfoot. So that's what started me down this rabbit hole of going on 25 years now.
Well, okay, I want to ask you this: is when you went down this rabbit hole, were you a believer, non-believer? Yes, no. These people are all crazy.
Well, I thought there may have been something to it because you just don't get this amount of material with something that's just totally fake or made up or hoaxed. But I thought that I would get into it and find that a lot of these stories don't really match up to what's being written, but they did, at least in this particular book. So it definitely led me down a pathway. Okay, I think there may be something out here. Now it's time to investigate.
And how long did it take you before you actually started believing? Or you seen your Bigfoot? Or, I mean, because everybody sees tracks.
Sure.
And I know you've seen the Bigfoot because you've seen the, have you actually seen Sasquatch run past you? I mean, you've got full eyes.
Well, that was that video right there. The video you started to show off. That was seconds after I had just seen one for the very first time with my naked eyes. And yeah, as you can see, I was pretty in a state.
So what did the rest of your crew think? I mean, you know, these guys, have they seen Bigfoot before?
Some of them have claimed that, well, one particular guy had seen a flash of one run by once. But the main point was a lot of those people who were kind of new and they were working under my wing. And that was the first time I had seen one with my naked eyes. I have been on investigations with other teams. I've been around the country on my own. But in this particular case, they were all hearing stuff. In fact, the base camp radio later would blurb in that, we're hearing a lot of movement to the southwest, side of the camp. And that's the direction that particular creature had gone after I had seen it, was to the southwest. And what had happened is as I was walking out to my car to get batteries, I got my batteries and I lit up a cigarette and I started looking around and I was shining my light downhill, which is the north side, and there was nothing. And I shone my light up the south side, which is uphill, and there it was standing there. Wow. And it was watching our base camp fire. It was watching us. It was October. All the leaves have dropped. And it was just, that's their natural curiosity. They're primates. So they have this propensity for curiosity. If you think about it, when we hear something go boom, we all go to the window to see what it was. Whereas other animals tend to go under desks and under chairs and whatnot. So it's just, they hear something, they're drawn to it, and they're going to keep an eye and see what's going on. Primates need mental stimulation. It's very hard for us to just go and think of nothing, do nothing, right?
Right.
So that's the primate mind. So they need entertainment. So we're basically their television when we're out there in the woods.
Did you hear it though behind you? Did you hear the leaves rustle? Because I've had experiences with Bigfoot, and I didn't hear nothing.
Well, the funny thing, it was standing there, so it's not like it moved into the scene. It had been standing there watching us for how long, I have no idea. But I was the only one making noise. And then when it walked off, I didn't hear anything, but I don't know. And I can't always say that it didn't make a noise when it walked off because I was in so much sensory overload at that point.
Right.
A lot of times, and that is very common with Bigfoot witnesses. I have a book coming out in May 31st. It's actually my fourth book called The Psychology of Bigfoot. And it's about the psychology of Bigfoot witnesses and people who make claims of Bigfoot, whether they be true or not, or, anything in between. But one of the things is that when somebody sees Bigfoot, their mind kind of goes into a sensory overload because, number one, it's not a normal thing in their catalog. Right. We all grow up knowing what a dog and a cat and an elephant and a bear and a kitten looks like and all the farm animals. Right. But when we see something that's not in that catalog, our mind has to stop for a second and try to figure it out. And that's part of some of the more stranger effects of, people claiming to have paranormal effects or supernatural effects of a Bigfoot. Sometimes it's their mind just trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, from my experience, like when I saw him one time, I heard him eating through a window as a kid, and I wouldn't have known he was there if I didn't smell him. But here I'm laying in the bed. I never heard him walk up, never heard him walk across the gravel. I didn't hear, I didn't hear him picking the fruit off the tree. I just heard, I looked out the window. He was looking at me and I was looking at him, and when he left, I was still standing at the window, and 2016, when we walked up Main the Hill, he was 50 yards. I never heard him. And that's why I'm asking. People say, he floats, he's fast. You don't hear anything.
Well, if you think about it, one of the most quiet creatures in the woods is a black bear. And look how big they are. However, you have this little 15, 12, whatever size armadillo. And the armadillo sounds like a Sherman tank coming through the woods. I remember being hunkered down in I think it was Alabama. And me and the researchers, we hear this. And this was an area where a woman had a sighting and she seemed legit. And we're all out there staking the area out. And all of a sudden we hear, and out comes this little armadillo. And it sounded like something that was like 300 pounds.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question because I've heard different sounds. You hear that woo woo, or the whistle, or the. Now, is that different breeds of Bigfoot? Is that, southern versus the northern west? Or, everybody says they hear different sounds.
Well, the fact is, we have to think of it as an animal, and an animal is going to have a catalog of sounds depending on the situation. Like chimpanzees, gorillas, macaques, all the primates have a whole set of calls. Birds have a whole set of different calls for different things. So when we hear them make different types of vocalizations, it's probably for different circumstances or different reasons.
Okay. Booker, you got anything you want to ask him? Look here.
Yeah. What are
He
the
writes some really crazy books about Bigfoot back in the day and witches and werewolves. The guy's got some awesome stuff, but
yeah, well, in my 3-volume series I wrote called Kicked Out of Heaven, I have a section on the Wild Man and the Green Man. So do you know anything about the Wild Man and the Green Man?
Not really.
I've
kept most of my stuff to Sasquatch, but I've heard them being called wild men. In the 1800s, they used to call them wild men.
Right. So that would definitely be a transformation from that time into this time.
Right.
And in the medieval times, they were referred to as wild men, which takes on a little bit more difference in context. There's a lot of psychological implications on what a wild man is in comparison to what the civility that they were enforcing during that time period for their humanism space. Okay. And the wild man was sort of like a caricature that was used in art, but they didn't have any literal evidence of it. But there could be, it's that invisible line right there on it. Could be real, it may not be, but we're going to keep it in the folklore space. And then it actualized into what we call the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch. So is there any difference in between the Bigfoot and the Sasquatch, or are both of those terms identifying the same thing?
Okay, so the way the term Bigfoot got coined was in 1958. A gentleman by the name of Jerry Crew was a bulldozer operator at this logging site, and the crew had observed all these tracks being left around the area and some other strange occurrences going on. So Jerry was the first one to cast this, and when he showed it to the Walla Walla, Washington press, one of the reporters there, wow, that's a pretty big foot. And the next day, the headline was, there's a new type of Sasquatch. It's called Bigfoot. And the name Bigfoot stuck. So Bigfoot was just a made-up name, as was pretty much Sasquatch. Sasquatch was actually a derivative made up by a Canadian journalist by the name of J.W. Burns in 1924. When he was talking to the Salish Indians, they called them Sasquatch.
Exactly. That's where it sounds like an Indian term, but keep going.
Right, yeah. So that's how that all transformed, the Sasquatch to Sasquatch, Bigfoot to Sasquatch via the press. And just like the abominable snowman, that was actually a mistake. That was a mistranslation by the press. The abominable snowman was a mistranslation of the press about what they were calling the creature, which actually was something snowman. It didn't mean abominable.
Was it the Yeti? Was it the Yeti?
No, the Yeti. Well, the Yeti was a whole nother term, but there are different terms. The literal translation that the British press got was abominable snowman, and they misinterpreted it. So,
right, the Yeti has a different cultural significance. That's Asian, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's very how should I say, Western Asian. Nepal. On the border with India, almost that whole area.
Okay.
I was just watching the Philippines call their Bigfoot a small man. You heard that?
Yeah. It seems like in Southeast Asia, like Malaysia, specifically Malaysia, they have something that looks a lot like a Bigfoot. However, it's very smaller in stature, less broad, a little longer armed. It's called the orang pendek. And, that one, like I said, my focus has been, the North American Sasquatch / Bigfoot. That's been the major focus of my investigations into this. And, I get that, there's a lot of folklore out there that Native Americans and the First Nations of Canada had, written about Bigfoot, whether they be an actual tribe of wild people or, to being stone giants. There's even one term that says evil that lurks under the cover of woods. There's all kinds of different derivatives. But the commonality is that they're reporting on something very similar in description. So we can take obviously, Native Americans and First Nations people always believed that, animals had spirits, wolves had spirits, and eagles had spirits. So obviously makes a lot of sense that something looking close to us, or, being the only other creature known to be walking upright, they would too give it magical powers and give it, spirituality just out of their beliefs.
Okay.
Well, on
okay.
the Egyptian walls, I've done some investigation and stuff like that. They have a Bigfoot, a hairy man. It talks about giants, So Bigfoot's been around. Do you believe he's something from that era that's just kept living and we just never heard about it? Or
Nope.
is it the alien?
Absolutely not. If you look at what a Bigfoot looks like, what it's been described as, we're talking about a form of great ape, very similar. We ourselves as Homo sapiens fall into the term as great apes. Now, I just need to put religious, feelings aside and stuff like that for the purpose of this discussion. But there's my second book I wrote was called "What Would Sasquatch Do?" Discussed basically primate behavior, meaning behavior that's common to Homo sapiens, common to pan troglodytes, the chimpanzees, gorilla barangay, basically all of the different great apes and the behaviors, and even New World monkeys as well, like macaques. And it turns out that we have a lot of commonalities in how we live and how we act in these different areas we live in. Now, it doesn't mean that there is, you break it down even more, there's more specifics, obviously, per species, but there's a commonality between all of them. We have territory, we have home ranges, and we have foci activity areas. And how we behave in those three areas is very relative to where that area is. For example, you be walking down the street, you're not going to be aggressive to another person. You're not going to be aggressive to an animal. However, if you're in your home and a strange animal walks in, for the most part, you're going to try to shoo it out, scare it out, get rid of it. And in more of extreme case, you're going to kill it. If a strange person walks in your house, you're apt to be more violent, which is kind of interesting. But so there are commonalities amongst all primates, including in looking at what has been described as Bigfoot behavior over the last, where we do get some behavioral traits. Their behavior is very similar to other primates.
All right.
Right. So let me ask you, has there ever been any form of intelligence discovered that's correlated to the Bigfoot, whether that be a weapon or some form of abode that they designed to live in, or things in a cave or anything of that nature?
Well, the first thing we always try to discuss is, do they use tools? Well, they may use simple tools. No one has ever seen them fashion a tool nor use a fashion tool. One of the more key things is that they don't use fire. So obviously, if they're using fire, we'd be finding them. So obviously, they're not as advanced as many people like to say. Oh, they're very advanced. A lot of people get romantic with this creature. Why? Because it looks a lot like us. And it's very romantic to think that there's an ancient form of people out in the woods that are living, on the land, and that's the way they want to live. That's very romantic. Unfortunately, it's not very realistic.
Right.
The fact is that we've never seen them use a complicated tool. We've never seen them use fire. We've never seen them wear any kind of protective clothing, except for in these very extreme one-off type of reports that seem to be the exception, not the norm. You know, I'm talking about your average
Hmm.
Bigfoot reports don't show any of this. They smell. They tend to smell. And as you know, Randy can tell you, they smell very horrible. I've smelled one when I got a print in 2006. In that same general area, I had my sighting. So years earlier, I had gotten a track up there, a print, actually a whole trackway, but I cast one of them, and we smelled that thing as it walked around us. But that all these reasons are telling me that they're not so advanced as the more romantic like to think it is.
Okay.
I think it's romantic, and yeah. Well, I can describe it as something cross between death, skunk, garbage, dog, and musk.
There you go. That's how I explain. It
Sulfur.
smells like a near garbage.
Now, I was a paramedic for a while, and I've been to dead body calls, and I will tell you, this thing smells worse than a dead body. When it hits
Right.
you, it hits you fast, and when it leaves, it's just as fast.
Okay.
You know, the only thing I can compare that smell to, and I don't mean to cut you off, Porter, was I hit a what do you call it, a vulture one time with my van. He flew out, hit my van, and it went in my grill. When it crossed my window, hit the truck behind me. I pulled on, he pulled over. The stench of rotting whatever was in that, I was puking. So was he. We're like,
Yeah.
Bigfoot. I would compare that to that.
You know, there's a reason why, we don't eat a big bird. We eat turkey. That's the biggest bird we'll eat. We won't eat a vulture because God knows what. Ugh.
Well, vultures are of the eagle family, so we don't eat eagles either. So we're definitely not gonna eat a vulture, which is a carnivore.
You hit one, you'll know.
But let me ask you: did you? Yeah, go ahead.
One dumb joke. One dumb joke. Did you hear about the vulture with 2 dead raccoons under each arm trying to get on an airplane?
No, I didn't. Tell me.
Yeah. They said, sorry, you're only allowed 1 carry-on.
Do you know carry-on is a term that is used very heavily in the medieval times. So they called them carry-on birds when they were referring to ravens or crows picking on carcasses and whatnot. So yeah, that's interesting. But let me ask you, how do you feel, or what do you think about the Bigfoot being the missing link? If we were to look at the Darwin's theory, sometimes they refer to it as the missing link in between the Darwin's theory and the finite human, the less hairy human,
I don't know. I'm not really very well versed in a lot of the prehistoric man, different types. I know some. I mean, obviously, over the years, I've gotten familiar with a lot of it, but I can't call myself an expert on that by any means. But I don't know. I would have to leave that kind of a question mark. I actually think that there is some traits of a Bigfoot that has some commonality with New World monkeys as well. For example, at nighttime, when I saw mine, I definitely saw what they call a tapetum lucidum. The eye shine that reflects back. There's a mechanism in the eye. It's called the tapetum lucidum. And this creature had it. And a lot of reports report eye shine when spotlighting. Now, no great ape has a tapetum lucidum. But there are some New World monkeys that do, like lemurs and tarsiers have it. So there are some primates. There's about a dozen primates that do, but they're all New World monkeys. They're not great apes. So this is an anomaly. So to me, it kind of puts a question mark. Is it really the missing link, or is perhaps there's something completely different on the great ape chart? Maybe a whole nother branch on its own.
Yeah, that is a possibility, because like you mentioned, lemurs, those are only found in Madagascar though, right?
I'm not quite sure of that, but I believe so.
Yeah, lemurs are only found in Madagascar. Well, we haven't found all the animals that are on the planet. There's land animals and water animals, so who knows?
Sure.
When
you think about it, the Billy ape was only discovered in the 90s. And that's a large, that's a great ape.
Yeah.
Right. So how large do you think a Bigfoot would have to stand in order to protect itself from the bear, the black bear or the grizzly bear? Like you would have to
I
be of a serious weight and height in order to fend off a grizzly bear, you know?
well, the one I saw was 8 foot, and probably about 400, 500 pounds. You know,
Mhm.
just on size alone. So, because just the bone structure of something that's 8 foot tall is rather in there. And don't forget that a chimpanzee, which has 98 or 96.4 or something like that percent of our DNA. I mean, they're not very far off from us. You put our DNA together, they're almost identical, with the exception of a very small percentage.
Yeah, they're only one chromosome off, right?
Yeah, and they're shorter. They're much shorter than we are. They're only like 5 foot tall, but they
Mhm.
have the strength of 10 people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen and I saw this and it was pretty amazing. They had a picture of this chimp that lost its hair. Now, mind you, this chimp didn't go to the gym, but this chimp looks cut like any bodybuilder would be, and you can understand where that strength comes from. So if you think about a Sasquatch now that's that size, that that wide, probably possesses some incredible strength. So I mean, chimpanzee, there is a group of chimpanzee that are called the lion killers. They go after lions and they kill them with their bare hands.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
so but you got to understand that as a primate, as do most of the great apes, they have one advantage over all the other predators. That's this right up here. And
Right.
if you think about
Right.
it, and when you look at marine animals that have intelligence, you talk about the whales, the dolphins, and look at the killer whales. They will try to get a great white shark to chase one of them, and then the other one will come up and spear him right in the side and kill him.
Yeah, they
And
have some serious hunting skills. Yeah.
right. And so you think about the when you have these large brained mammals, such as a primate, and obviously the orcas, it's the brain that's the most dangerous weapon.
Well, if you think about it, the strength of you've seen in the woods yourself, 5-6 foot up in the air, trees, 6 to 7 inches around, snap. We can't snap that with 2 hands if we tried, and they're snapping at 8-9 foot in the air, and these things have some.
Here's the big warning I have about that is that unless we actually see the Sasquatch snapping the trees off, we can't really count it. What I understand and what I've always been taught by my mentor, who's been doing that since the early 70s, was that we tend to look for breaks that have twists in them. Because as a Sasquatch will walk through the woods or the forest, we look for tree breaks that are at about the 6 foot level, because that's where their shoulders would be about. So something that's, obviously a deer isn't going to make that kind of path. So the only other thing that's comparable is a moose. And the moose aren't, indigenous to most of the United States, only certain sparse parts. Parts of my forest do have moose in them, or occasionally have a moose in them. But the thing with the moose is they leave very distinct tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't miss a moose track because there's so much weight to put on one leg as they're moving. It's the weight of that just compresses. But a lot of times you'll find these breaks, and I investigated a case back in 2006 where five different people had 2 sightings within 15 minutes of one another on the same trail. And we did notice a tree had been pulled down over the pathway. That they had noticed it actually. So we examined that, and it was just pulled down. It wasn't broke, it was just pulled down. And then where the guy had seen it hiding in the woods on the second sighting, we decided to go in there and take a look around. And I tracked this thing about 75 yards down into the wood line and out into the road. And everywhere you could look, there was tree breaks there, and they were all hanging because it was grabbing it. And as it was breaking it, as it's grabbing it, it's moving it like this. So it's twisting it.
That's so why would they do that?
Well, they're getting the branches out of the way so it doesn't smack them in the puss.
So it's not like
so
we
they're
think
right,
it's,
right. Now, as far as why would a Sasquatch just pull down a tree? I think that they would have to have purpose. Like the tree down on the trailway was a sign of saying, hey, this is my trailer, stay away. But I can't explain. There's a lot of people that dedicate themselves to taking pictures of all these stick structures claiming they're Sasquatch, but there's zero evidence that there actually is Sasquatch evidence there unless there's nearby tracks, which in 99% of these people saying, oh, we look at all these Sasquatch structures we found. And that's because they're reading somebody else who read somebody else who read somebody else who read somebody else that thought that, hey, this may be Sasquatch. And then as it gets through the grapevine, that is Sasquatch, but it's not.
Well, what about the trees upside down? The big trees with the roots in the air, the tree shoved in the ground, the bent over trees, weaved in and out.
I will say this, it's fascinating, but unless somebody sees some other Sasquatch sign around it or actually sees the Sasquatch doing it, I can't say what it is. And we shouldn't go to the assumption that it is a Sasquatch. Because let's just say, let me give you an example. Say there's a straight wind that you have a very weak dead tree that's kind of loose in the roots and whatever, and the straight line wind flips it, and it just happens to throw it in the air and it comes down onto the end. There's one explanation, and that's just as comparable to saying a Sasquatch did that by picking it up and putting it in there. What was the purpose? I don't think these things do. I mean, I don't think these things do anything without purpose. Like everybody. Yeah. Obviously, the tree breaks when it's walking through the woods. That's for a purpose, to keep from getting hit in the face. If somebody sees some stick structures that are built up that may be a shelter, well, that's possible. Again, that makes more sense. But I don't see the sense in what would be taking a tree and sticking it in the ground upside down. And frankly, the size of the trees would look like it would take more of a bulldozer than a Sasquatch to do. So
I don't know. I've had some pretty big trees thrown on me out there in the woods.
Well, that again, yeah, but again, that's for a reason, right?
Right.
And that's why that's what's the differentiation behind that is if you're standing in the woods and a tree comes down and it's pulling down a tree because it's trying to scare you out of there, that's for a purpose. But for people to walk into an area, and I had a friend of mine who she's like, oh, let me go check this area out. Oh, she just saw all these Sasquatch signs. I'm like, what Sasquatch signs? She's like, look at all these tree breaks. And I was like, and that's not Sasquatch sign. Sasquatch sign is tracks and evidence of something big walking through the forest, just like a hunter would. A hunter looks for deer sign, right? He's looking for track and game trail. When you're looking for moose, you're looking for track and bigger game trail. When you're looking for bear, you're looking for track and game trail and possibly some evidence of bear damage. Same thing with deer. You're looking for rut marks and stuff like that, right? For some reason, we have a bunch of people that have no hunting history that are running into the woods saying, look at these tree breaks. That's Sasquatch. No, it's not. It even to a normal hunter, if I see a couple of deer track over there, okay, fine. But, if I find, well, let me give you a great example. Here's some deer track. And here's a tree upside down, in the forest, in the ground.
Right.
We have more evidence there that the deer did that than a Sasquatch did that. And that's the way, right? That's the way we have to think as an investigator, to be believed, to be logical, to be rational, and not to be so desperate. Because one of the things that these people make us sound, especially to the critics and to the skeptics, is they're sounding desperate to find any kind of Bigfoot evidence out there. So now they're making these up. So I've always stick to the conventional, stick to the facts. Did we have sign of a large animal walk here? Yeah, that we can prove. Do we have sign that a Sasquatch may have made a print here? Yes, because there's a track. That's the facts.
What about the teepee effect? Where they you'll see 2 or 3 trees, stacked up like a teepee, and is that a Bigfoot or is that,
I think it's
people-
bushcraft. I think it's just plain old bushcraft a lot of times. And then a lot of times you'll have trees though coming on one another too. There's a lot of things that are more mundane explanations and Occam's razor that, probably the simplest thing it was just a nature thing. Maybe it was a windy day and trees started just cracking down and one tree hits another, that hits another, that hits another. And you get that kind of domino effect. And if you've been in the woods long enough, there's a lot of dead tree out there. They may be standing, but all you need is one hit and then you have a whole bunch down.
So we shouldn't believe everything they tell us about the Bigfoot evidence.
Oh, never. There is more misinformation out there than there is information nowadays. It seems like the people that there are certain people that want to put themselves ahead of everybody else by saying, look at me, look at all my Bigfoot evidence, look at all my Bigfoot evidence, look at all my Bigfoot evidence. Right. And they try to, pander to an audience that, oh, I'm an expert on the Bigfoot. But yet they've never seen one, or they claim to have seen them 40 or 50 times. Or they never can find any conventional evidence like a track that can be verified or dermal ridges or hair evidence or anything like that. Or even a photograph or an audio of one. No, you have them saying they've seen it and all this other tree structure evidence, but nothing substantial to say to anybody else. So that seems to be a lot of the evidence that's out there now, especially on social media. You have to parse unfortunately, because of social media, you have to parse the wheat from the chaff quite a bit now.
You're right. Well,
Okay.
it's the.
I got a question here.
Go ahead.
The lore of Bigfoot has been going on for quite some time, right? Now, this is actually like a and then a B question that follows it, right?
Sure.
Out of all the evidence that you reviewed when it comes to sightings and then comparison in between those views or drawings that may have come up from what people had seen, do you think there's more than one?
What, Bigfoot? Oh, absolutely. We're looking at a living, breathing species of an undiscovered primate in North America.
So there's more than one then, basically.
Absolutely, yes. It's a species.
Okay.
Because the second one I saw, because a year after I saw my 8-foot one, I saw a second one, and that one was 5.5 feet. It was a juvenile. So.
But are they different looks in different parts of the United States? Is the ones in California darker black and bigger? The ones versus the East Coast are 6-7 foot tall, and they got curly hair. I mean, is there?
Is there? Well, if you think about Homo sapiens, we're very dimorphic and diverse, right? But we're all the same species. We're all Homo sapiens. We all have the same DNA, right? We all have the same, not DNA, but we all have the same root DNA, the mtDNA. We all have the same genes in our body. I'm saying, or rather, not DNA. We all have the same genes in our. We all have the same design. Yes.
Right.
And
part of the reason why I asked that question is because then we can suspect that there would be reproduction, and then we would have baby Bigfoots. Has there been evidence of any baby Bigfoots out there?
There actually has.
Okay, let's go down this route. Let's see.
Okay, so number one, if you look at allegedly now in the 1994 Freeman film, filmed by Paul Freeman in the Cascade Mountains in Washington, he had filmed a rather large Bigfoot, and later on in the frame, he filmed apparently what looked like it picking up an infant. Now that's just one particular case. In 1997 in Modena, New York, accidentally taken. It wasn't discovered until 2002. And I was the first one to investigate. there is a video of and again, it's hard to make out, but if you watch it frame by frame, you can understand it. There is a rather large dark figure in the background. Now these people are in the foreground, drunk off their bums, and they're videotaping themselves. They're not videotaping what's going on behind them, because every once in a while the camera will go off the picture and you're like, damn, go back. But what you see is a rather large dark object in the back start to move from right to left, and something jumps off it, climbs into a tree hand over hand, and starts to swing around in the tree, while the big object walks and then turns around and goes back into the tree line. And whatever it is swinging around the tree, goes hand over hand again. And the investigation I had done was so extensive on that. We checked zoos, we checked labs, we checked the property owner, we checked everything. And there was no way that could have been, and being New York State, it's illegal to own a primate in New York State. You have to be a zookeeper. And that's number one. The property that it was on wasn't allowing pets on the property. That's number two. And they were doing vehicle checks as cars came in. It's kind of hard to hard a monkey or a small chimpanzee, right? So you would have to defy all these laws. And lastly, the common sense thing, if you owned a monkey or a chimpanzee, would you just let them go up in a tree and hang out at dusk? Good luck getting them back, right? But behind that tree was this old apple orchard, and that whole area was covered with wild fruit, wild strawberries, wild raspberries, wild blueberries, enough food and supplements and food source there. And it was a pretty good, 700-800 acres and beyond around that area that was just forested of this old abandoned farmland. So there's another piece of video footage that says, may particularly show a juvenile Bigfoot. In 2010, there was a trail cam video or a trail cam picture in Vermont, not a video, trail cam picture in Vermont of what may be a Sasquatch grabbing an apple off the ground and perhaps holding something that you see this strange different appendage like a paw or a hand. So it's really hard to break up. And again, not all of this is 100% proven. To me, these fall in the more positive categories, but they're not absolute, and they're not by means anything evidence or scientific evidence. But to me, as an investigator, I call them intelligence. And to me, the intelligence points that, yes, this is a species.
Okay, I have a question for you. Bigfoot tracks. You follow them in the snow to a field, and they just disappear. They don't go any farther. They're not near trees. Are they portholing? Go through a porthole? Are being picked up by a spaceship? What would you say as a detective? You're following these tracks, and they just stop.
They're misidentified eagle or bird tracks. And what people are seeing is the 2 feet come down, it jumping up, jumping down, jump, and then it flies off. And what happens is the sun hits those impressions, melts them away, makes them look bigger than what they are, makes them look like a Bigfoot track. And there you have it.
Okay. I was watching Skinwalker Ranch. They saw something run past them behind this hotel. They caught a glimpse of it. So they start running after it. I know this is TV, but they're running after it. You see these big footprints, and they end up like in this middle of a field, and the footprints stop.
Well, again, that's TV. I can't say. Now, again, Skinwalker Ranch, totally different animal. Totally different animal. No, number one, if there was an actual Bigfoot out there, like any of the other animals that are out there, they would have been spotted a long time ago. There happens to be something that manifests that looks like a Bigfoot. At least, again, 100, or actually now almost 200 years ago, 150 years ago, people saw a Bigfoot and they called it a wild man. Right. In one particular case, they even called it a bear man, because that's the nearest thing they could picture in their mind. So
there's a video from Skinwalker Ranch. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But it's showing one of the old homestead homes. and you see something walk past the window, but you're not sure, it's dark. And as it walks from behind the building to the woods, it looks like the body of a Bigfoot the way it's moving, but it's shimmering.
Again,
Just
there's a lot of things in
just
the paranormal.
yeah.
There's a lot of things in the paranormal we can't explain. And I often tell people, just because something looks like a Bigfoot in certain circumstances may not be a Bigfoot, it may be a manifestation.
Okay, that's, like I said, I'm asking
Right.
you because you're the detective.
Right.
We're getting misled on TV shows like Finding Bigfoot and all these other, I know you go deep into the investigations.
Yeah. Like I'll give you some great examples. For the most part, TV will go over things way too quick. They have a timetable, they have a production staff.
Right.
They have to go. So they make it sound like they look like they're doing a long, big expo. We're going to be here for 3-4 days. No, they're going to be there for you're going to be there for 3 days, but most of the time is going to be done interviewing, doing setups, and the investigation time is maybe 5 to 10% of that.
Right.
So it's not very realistic. Now, when you look at Expedition Bigfoot, the other TV show, their entire first season was shot on Antoine Ranch. And they tried to make it out like they were in some remote forest in Colorado. Now, it is what it is. It's entertainment. So you have to take a lot of these shows for what they're worth. They're just entertainment. When you want to see something real, look at a documentary, not a per se a TV series, because their whole TV series, think about it, they don't want to find nothing. It's kind of my beef with
Show's over.
It's like kind of my beef with Oak Island, the Curse of Oak Island. They're not going to find the treasure because that'll be the end of the TV show.
Right.
That's the last thing they would want to find.
Well, see, that's what I like about your shows. You're out there investigating it, and you're not doing a TV series for 8 weeks or 6 weeks like American Mountain Monsters. They're out there yelling and screaming in the woods and building traps and all this other stuff. I mean, they're trying to capture it. You're out there trying to find it. You're proving it's out there. The footprints, the eyes. That's what I like about your show and the shows that you do, is because it's not for TV ratings.
Well, what it's for is this. And I don't it could be for TV ratings, but the bottom line is Hollywood's not interested in a lot of times the truth. Truth can be very mundane and boring to people.
Right.
My purpose, my goal is I look at every case of Bigfoot from an individual standpoint. Just like as an investigator, I would look at every case of arson, every case of robbery, every case of theft, every case of infidelity. You look at all of those separately. Just because there was one robbery doesn't mean we look at all robberies in the same way. Same thing with a Bigfoot case. We start fresh. We start with, okay, we start down the middle, unbiased, no confirmation bias. I may believe in Bigfoot, but I'm not believing this case until I see the evidence and I get the facts before me. And that consists of, a 3-tiered interview, evidence search, background, all that type of stuff before we even start to even think about this. But my job isn't to prove to the world Bigfoot exists, nor is it to come up with scientific evidence. My job as an investigator is to collect evidence and give it to science and let them prove it to science that it is Bigfoot or not. That's my goal. That's what every investigator out there, non-credentialed person out there. I'm not a scientist, so I can't prove anything to science. Unless, of course, you're dragging in a carcass, and I don't believe in killing one for that sake. I won't do it. If one comes and attacks me, all right, I'll have to defend myself. But other than that, I'm not going to kill one for the sake of science. My hope is maybe we'll come across a body or something that we could use, or come close enough to one that is
we've never come across the body yet.
Allegedly. And I really think that there may be my guess is a person who's come across a body probably has never said anything because they're too afraid, because they think it's a human being or they think it's some kind of crime that has been committed. That's probably the 1 or 2 cases where actually somebody has had come across a body. But why are there no bodies? Everybody loves asking that question. But when you think about it, one of the suspect animals that was believed to be a relative of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch is the Gigantopithecus blackie. And that was a prehistoric orangutan that lived in the Southeast Asia area. At the same time, we had the land bridge. And they went extinct. And even though they existed 100,000 years ago, the only thing in the fossil record we have of a Gigantopithecus is, like 3 jawbones and a handful of teeth. We don't have a vertebrae. We don't have a femur. We don't even have a skull or a mandible. Or a maxilla rather. We have the mandibles, but we don't have a maxilla or a skull. I mean, we don't have a pelvic bone. These are some of the biggest bones in the body. The femur, the skull, the pelvic bone. We don't have those for a Gigantopithecus. We have 3 maxillas and or 3 mandibles and some teeth. And it's proven in science. Oh, that exists. What happened to the rest of the bones? Now, is it possible that the being the jungle, the air in there is a little more, the soil is more acidic and the bones have disintegrated? I'm not buying that. Not after 100,000 years when they're finding prehistoric humans buried there. So, why are they not finding one? Because bones are hard to come by. And when you're talking about a population of maybe 5,000 creatures nationwide, and that's not even a normal guesstimate. I'm just putting it out there as a hypothetical. If there's 5,000 of them in the United States, that's pretty rare. Because you think about it, New York has 2 million deer, and that's New York State. They have 10,000 bear in New York State. They have like 30,000 coyote in New York State. And yet you go out in the woods and you never find a deer carcass, or I'm sorry, you never find a bear carcass. You rarely find a coyote carcass. That's because nature has a marvelous system of cleaning up things.
Yeah, animals carry out the bones.
And not only they carry off the bones, but you have bear that'll eat the bones. You'll have raccoons that'll eat the bones. Coyote will eat bones when they are low in calcium. Raccoons will eat bones. Possums will eat bones. And then you have insects to take care of a lot of other stuff as well. Then you have field mice and other rodents that'll come in and nibble off the carcass. Birds, vultures,
I got a mellow shepherd who eats every bone you put in front of him. Pork chop steak. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, he just shatters them with his jaws.
They could only die in one specific area. They could have an intellect towards death, which has been found amongst animals, especially elephants, and there's other animals, prehistoric animals, that have shown evidence of having an intelligence and respect towards death, where they go to one specific area to die. And who knows? We can't say that they're not cannibals either, So all of those things are a possibility.
100%. I had this cat. It wasn't even my cat. It was my ex-wife's cat. And the cat came in the house one day and all of a sudden jumped up in my lap and laid down. And by that night, the cat wouldn't leave my side. Always wanted me holding it. And the cat died right in my lap.
Wow.
So animals do have this propensity for death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Right.
There was a lady on here said she's been watching Bigfoot 8 times, and she said she thought it was pretty much a joke. So tomorrow, does that mean they have to go look 100 miles away farther to find Bigfoot?
Not quite understanding that. They've seen Bigfoot. What?
Here, I'll pop it up on the screen for you.
Oh, Helton. Okay. Oh, watching Finding Bigfoot maybe 8 times. Yeah, well, that's, his opinion. I've actually helped scout a couple other locations, so I know what they're under. They're incredibly rushed. They want to, like Cliff and actually Matt and Bobo are very like, hey, what's the skinny on this? What's going on? And then the production crew is like, come on, we got to go. And I get that. They were completely tied up with a lot of baloney and BS, and they tried to do the best they could with what they had and time they had to do it. You got to put the personalities aside. They tried their best, and their first season was horrible. In fact, after the first season, they all threatened to walk because the editing was done kind of in a kind of misleading manner, and they didn't like that. They didn't like their reputations being on that for that reason. So there almost wasn't a season 2 of Finding Bigfoot because of that. But so they had a big rewrite of their contract, and they had a little more creative control over, what gets edited out, what gets edited in, how things sit. Unlike Expedition Bigfoot, which started off with season 1 at the Antoine Ranch, and it just seemed to get a little stranger as the seasons have gone on there. But
so I do have 2 pictures out of my 3-book series that I wrote on the medieval times. I want to run past you real quick. One of them is from the late 1800s here in America, where they had a lot of men with the lupus condition that had overgrown hair that they used in the early circuses, the traveling circuses. And one is a painting from 1499 to be exact. Let's see if it could pull up here. Okay. Are you seeing it? Do you see it?
I don't. It should be on that share screen there.
Okay.
There we go.
There it is. Okay, so on the left we have a wild man here. I can make it a little bit larger here.
Oh yeah.
This is what the definition of a wild man was during those times. The wild man, and then the green man, and then this is also a painting that we have here from 1499, as it was called. It was a painting titled "The Sylvan Man." And that was obviously done in the medieval times. And you see,
well,
go ahead. Here's what you want to say.
Here's the interesting thing about this is that modern science at that particular time was very steeped into religious aspect as well during the Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're probably seeing is people here with hypertrichinosis.
Right.
Which is right. And that's just the way, like the Sylvan Man, which seemed to be very hairy. Same with the other one, the Green Man.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's probably people with hypertrichinosis that they built this legend around.
Right. That was still living in the woods. They didn't have civility in them yet. And there was a large line in dividing from the Dark Ages into medieval Europe where they were developing.
And if you think about it at the time, all right. If you think about it at the time, here you've got this kid that's got this hair all over the body. You're going to be made fun of as a parent. You're going to be considered no good. You're going to be considered spawning the devil's child. You're going to be doing all that. So what do? They don't want to kill the kid. So they leave him in the woods by himself, or they leave the young adult in the woods by himself. So they are.
We got a lot of cases of that, of being left in the woods by itself. Even the Hindu thing. What was that? I forgot it. The raising of the wolf child. I forgot the name of the Hindu story, but that actually there was a real situation of that as well, where a little girl got left out there and was actually raised by some wolves. So keep going.
And then you have, think about where it comes. The great Victorian age novel Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan. You have all these, different scenarios where, like neurofibromatosis, the Elephant Man. There's what they call them, the Elephant Man. He was not anywhere near an elephant. He was a man with neurofibromatosis. So when you look at stuff, you always have to kind of put that in context of, is there a medical condition there? And there was hypertrichinosis. That's obvious. To me. And of course, how did they treat those people? They shunned them. Shunning was the punishment of the day, punishment du jour. Except witchcraft, and they burned you.
I got all of that in here too. I got a lot of that in there.
They burn you. They burn you for that.
Right. And also with the symbology of the holding the bludgeon stick. I just wanted to put it out there that it takes testosterone to grow hair. So definitely when it comes to the symbology of males having more hair than females, it's because the chemical testosterone.
Well, hold on a second. You and I have a lot to talk about having a lot more hair than me.
So yeah, so the rah 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 of the man's masculinity and carrying the bludgeon object is
It's true.
definitely
It's true. When
right.
I go to the barber and I say a little off the back, I mean a little off the back.
Right, exactly. So, the rah 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 of man definitely comes from hair. I guess we could also see that inside the lion, and we can also see that inside the gorilla as well, having a more mane, and even the orangutan is considered to be more intelligent than the rest of the monkeys, and they produce more hair than the other breeds of monkeys. So, I just wanted to put that out there.
An interesting thing about orangutans, all the great apes build their beds, right?
Mhm.
We happen to just buy ours at the store, but like chimps will build their beds, gorillas will build their beds. Orangutans not only build their beds, they also make pillows and blankets, which out of leaves, and they actually intertwine leaves and stuff like that, intertwine branches and leaves and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, but I just want to say that last segment, right, Randy, showed our inner Dutch Mantel.
Well,
So,
I got a question to ask you. You ever see these people like in Mexico where they have that wolf man where the hair is all over their faces?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
hypertrichinosis.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
hypertrichinosis. There's another ailment with lupus in the name. I can't
Yeah.
remember it, but lupus is also in the werewolf lane. Lupus, and it's connected to the moon and with all of that. So
So I mean, could that be anything that's kind of like mixed to the Bigfoot? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't think so.
breeding-
See that. So let me explain to you some of the quintessential differences in a Bigfoot. Number one, we'll start from the top to the bottom. They seem to have a sagittal crest, which is
Right.
very common to silverback gorillas. Some of them have sagittal crests. They have a lack of a neck. In other
Right.
words, they don't have a neckline. They have that high, and that's why they kind of have to turn a little bit when they look. Right? They have to kind of twist their body, similar to a gorilla.
You see my point.
And lastly is their footprints. And like there's people that say, oh well, Bigfoot's a human, and this is the grand argument to all of that. While their footprints look similar to ours structurally, they are not. They lack an arch, they're flat-footed, and they have a mid-tarsal break. We don't. We have the ball, we pivot on the ball of our foot, we have an arch, and we have narrow heels. They have very wide, broad-based heels. They have very wide, broad. It's not called Bigfoot because of the length. It's called Bigfoot because of the width. I like I said, the one I got in Fort Ann was about 14 inches long. Okay, that's large, but not tremendously large, one would think. But it was 4 3/4 inches wide. Pretty wide.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And that's the
tree huggers there.
So they're definitely not. They do not have the same foot structure as us. So in looking at those three basic points: sagittal crest, lack of a neck, foot structure, and even arm length. Their arm length seems to be a little bit longer than ours. Our hands dangle usually just below the hip line. Theirs dangles to just above the knees. So when you look at those four anatomical structural points, you realize you're looking at something that's not a Homo sapien.
Right.
So, and hybrids only last for a very short period of time. And I was a scientist who tried to say this was a hybridization, but that anthropologically and historically did not make sense because a period of hybridization only lasts for about maybe 1,000 to 5,000 years tops. So until the, mother creature, shows up or the end result shows up. So, so definitely we're looking at something that's not Homo sapien and is obviously not any of the other great apes that we know. There's a lot of people that are in the field that are trying to really overcomplicate things with adding, how should I say it? Things have gotten complicated. When I first got involved, this was in the late 90s. There wasn't social media. There wasn't, there was an internet presence, but there wasn't social media. When social media came about, then all these fringe ideas
back in the 90s, all the paranormal, the supernatural stuff, the half human, half thing, the cloaking Bigfoot, the wormhole Bigfoot, the UFO Bigfoots, they were all fringe ideas. So when you and none of them to this day have any more grounding than they did when social media came out. Now we're talking maybe about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I had gotten into this 25 years ago, and it wasn't really until about 2012 we started to see this really spin up. So this is only like really this kind of new age. While it was there, was considered very fringe. Now the problem is that you get so many people that want to jump on the bandwagon because I want to be important or whatever. And then what they do is they misinform the general public. They confuse the general public into what we're looking at as an animal when we should be dealing it with like an undiscovered primate. We would get a lot further than trying to get into campsites holding hands and hoping Bigfoot will show up in the middle of our ring.
Yeah.
Oh, there's my buddy. My buddy, the
Yeah, that's
sandwich
sort of like
savant.
the old Bat Boy magazines and stuff like that in the 90s. I remember that stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know, and again, I'm gonna shoot back to because I've heard the story in Tennessee. I'm hearing a lot more now. That ball of light, you see a ball of light, and all of a sudden Bigfoot appears, or a beam from the sky and Bigfoot appears. Do you believe? Now, I'm asking you because you're an investigator. Like I said, I can only investigate so much. I can only see what I see on TV. And when I get somebody like you, who, you know, he's out there. Have you seen this? Have you heard of it? Do you think it's true?
There could be a number of scientific reasons why. Again, like I said, the mind playing tricks on it. You have post-traumatic regression. It's the way a person remember it. Like I see this ball of light, and then there was a Bigfoot there. Maybe they were going through post-traumatic. There's also post-traumatic stress disorder too, which can get people Bigfoot on the brain, where after they have a legitimate sighting, they're seeing Bigfoot everywhere. Those are the people take pictures and then show you the pictures with 5 Bigfoots in them with red circles on them. And you're like, where? Have I heard of these? Again, like I say, they seem to be the outliers. They're not the norm. They're the outliers. So just hearing them as anecdotes, I can't really judge them. I would have to interview that person. I would have to see what they have to offer. I would like to gauge their testimony, put it under a little scrutiny a bit to see if it holds up. So really, I could not tell you necessarily anything about them other than they're the outliers. I mean, you think about it, we've been dealing with Bigfoot sightings in modern times since the first newspaper account, 1818, in Sackett's Harbor, New York. That was the first report of a wild man being seen, covered in reddish brown hair, and scaring a bunch of hunters off. In 1879, we see that in Powell, Vermont, where 2 boys out on a hunting trip left their muskets behind and fled in fear after seeing a reddish brown wild man covered in hair, naked, covered in hair. Right. Jonas Galusha, the gubernatorial candidate in Vermont, ran on that ticket to capture the wild man. He didn't win, but
I was in Johnson, Tennessee, at one of those Civil War events, where they do the reenactments, and they had people down there would take pictures. You remember the old glass pictures? They taking the camera with. All right, and he had a soldier's diary. And inside that diary, my grandfather told me this story too. My grandfather was 106 years old. But they say during the Civil War that Bigfoot would run through their camps, take their pigs, their dogs, food, knock down stuff. And a lot of the soldiers got scared and wouldn't go in the woods. So Bigfoot's been around a while. I mean, even in the Civil War, they were seeing the Bigfoot.
Okay, so let me give you, because New York is one of the older colonized states here in modern times.
Right.
So we first have Samuel D. Champlain, and he was traveling in the 1650s, and he first talked, I believe 1650s. Don't quote me on that. The older I get, the less I remember somehow. I don't know how that works.
Hey,
But,
it happens to all of us, brother. I'll tell you that.
Oh,
Shit.
but Samuel D. Champlain, when he was discovering the St. Lawrence River, he talked to the Micmac Indians. And they talked about the Gogoo, the hairy man, what they called hairy man beast. So that was really the first inkling. In 1754, Rogers Ranger's diary. Rogers Rangers, the famous troop that the United States Rangers were formed after. But the Rogers Rangers were this famous Ranger troop that fought for the British Army in the French and Indian War.
right.
Rogers Rangers wrote that they had to repel with a volley of shot a group of bear that were throwing rocks at them. Figure that one out.
The bears don't throw rocks.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Then
But
we have
yeah,
18
it's been a good time
so-
with you guys. I got to make a move. I got other things pulling at my coattail right now. It was a beautiful conversation, and you know I'll be here next time with Rock and Randy. So yeah, you guys keep it up though. Keep it going on the Sasquatch. We need to figure this thing out and go ahead and get out there with the binoculars and the rifle, right? The rifle.
You're right, man.
Right. The 30-aught
Oh,
gauge or something. We got to get out there with something. All right. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you all
Pleasure,
again.
man.
And if anybody in the audience, if you wanted to get the books where you saw those pictures, go to kickedoutofheaven.com. It's there available right now. And
It's on my
we'll be
Facebook
talking
page
about those
also.
books some more. What did you say? Say it again.
It's on my Facebook page also, all your books.
Yeah, it's on his Facebook page. And I'll be here. You all be hearing more from me. So salute. All right. Appreciate it.
So,
Take care.
Steve, is there
Yes,
anything
sir.
else you want to? Is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I could go on with this for hours of questions because
Well, do you have any questions for me? We
fascinated
can go,
by what by your.
we can go another 15 minutes if you like.
All right. So,
So go ahead.
what you're saying is that the Bigfoot and the alien thing is basically bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, why would an alien show up on this planet naked? I mean, we have some of the most hostile environment in the forest. We have
Right.
chiggers, we have ticks, we have fleas, we have mosquitoes, we have leeches, we have snakes, we have spiders, venomous ants, stinging insects. We have all these things. Why would they show up without any protective gear? And that leads me to another point. If we went to a planet that had the same concentration of oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide in the air like our planet does,
Right.
would we be able to get off this and same gravity? And will we be able to get off that spacecraft and breathe that air in and roam around freely? We would, but the problem is we would probably be dead within a month because we have no immunity to the bacteria or to the viruses that are particular to that environment. We don't have a bacterial, and when we are born, we start to grow immunity. That's why babies that are very well protected against the environment turn out to be some very sick kids when they go to school.
Right.
But kids that are let outside and exposed to things, exposed to other people, exposed to the bacteria. Yeah, we may get sick as babies, get colds and whatnot, but we build up a wall, a bacterial and viral wall, defense against those items. So what would end up happening, and that's the exact reason why when the guys came back from the moon, they quarantined them for several days because they wanted to make sure they weren't bringing back any viruses or bacteria to the earth that could cause a worldwide pandemic.
Kind of like the illegal aliens coming over the border.
Very much.
You know what I'm saying?
But,
we won't talk about it. That's another show.
Right, yeah. But the issue there is that it does not seem likely that again, science fiction, outliers and sightings, not the norm. So,
Right. Well, Steve, I know you're busy, and we taken up your time, and appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything you want to push out there? Any books or conventions you're at, or TV shows?
Oh my goodness, I got so much going on. I am supposed to be on several more episodes of The Proof Is Out There with Tony Harris on the History Channel. I am
love
on the
that
Bigfoot.
show.
I am on the Bigfoot panel with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Ken Gerhardt, Kathy Strain. So I'm in very excellent company there. And I kind of feel, and Cliff Barrickman, I kind of feel honored to be amongst them. But the other thing is I do have a book coming out at the end of the month, but you can you can just search my name, Steve Coles, on Amazon, and you'll find all my books there. New one comes out May 31st. That'll be on Amazon as well. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/@Squatch-D TV, all one word, just like my screen name in the chat. And my website is squatchdetective.com, and that'll lead you to everywhere else too. So that's my stuff. So that's my plug for the day. And of course, I do a podcast Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, and Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, we do the Bigfoot news.
Wow, you're busy, man.
I certainly am.
Well, you know,
And-
something I enjoy your shows. You know, like I said, they're very. It's a learning lesson to watch your shows. It's not like watching Finding Bigfoot here in a knock here.
Thank you.
And
We
anybody
find-
out there has not seen Steve's shows, you need to go. Even if you go on YouTube and look up some of the shows, or go to his what's it, SasquatchTV.com. You have
Squatch-D TV. Yep.
okay. I saw there's tons of videos on there that can see you in the field. I mean, you do investigation work. I've seen you down running across railroad tracks through woods, and you know,
Yep.
looking for leaves and scat and everything else. And guys, if you haven't seen the show, you need to go see it because the guy's awesome. You will not watch Finding Bigfoot or Mountain Monsters again because those are just comedy shows.
Yeah, I like to say we put out, you know, if you want to know the truth and you want the honest truth, that's one thing we pride ourselves on in our channel is we're about the truth. We're not about candy coating things. We're not about tiptoeing around things. We're about the hard cold facts, the hard cold truth. We're there to show legitimate, what we believe is legitimate evidence, while pointing out the illegitimate evidence as well. And that's, you know, one of the things we do. We're not straight debunkers. We're not straight believers, but we just tell it like it is. And that's really important to us. But I am going to be doing some road shows this year. I'm going to be at the Rochester, New York Rochester Parafest, which is going to be in June. In August, I'll be at the Hocking Hills Bigfoot Festival, the biggest Bigfoot festival in the United States to date. That's in Logan, Ohio. Last year, there was over 40,000 people that showed up on this 2-day event.
Wow.
September, I'll be at the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure right on the base of the Chestnut Ridge, where all this, not only do Bigfoot sightings happen there, but there's a lot of UFO sightings there. It's nearby the Kecksburg UFO crash, that whole area. So I'll be out there in September. And in October, I'll be at the Whitehall Sasquatch Festival in Whitehall, New York, the Bigfoot capital of New York. So
I saw you doing an interview there.
Yep. I think it was with ESPN. I think that.
I saw you doing an interview with somebody, and they were asking you today. It's growing larger every day. You know, every time new people coming.
Yes, that was yeah. I know you were talking. Yep.
What do you think about a convention here in Las Vegas?
I think it should happen, and I would love to speak there.
Well, you know something? I got some people who want to make this happen, and I would definitely love to have you come and be a speaker.
Oh, I'd love to. I've only been to Vegas to the airport. So it's on my bucket list to get outside the airport and start.
Well, you know something, if you come to Vegas, I will take you up to the Red Rock Mountain area.
Oh,
where the Indians are at. There's a ghost town up in there. We could go up to Mount Charleston, which is like, I'm in Vegas, I can see the snow on the mountain, but it's a 35, 40-minute ride. That's all Indian reservation up there with wild horses and other creepy things walking around.
I want to go outside Area 51.
Oh, I drove by it, but I never dare to go near the fence.
I just near it. Yeah, I mean, near it can be 100 yards away.
Well, yeah, they said they got sharpshooters up there that'll take you out before you get over the fence.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go on Area 51, but I want to go near there. Just to say
Did you know they found Elvis Presley's airplane at Area 51?
Yeah. Yeah, some guy's driving it around now, apparently.
Yeah, he bought it and it's in Florida and he's reconditioning it. That's
And
crazy.
and of course, 2 other things on my bucket list. Well, actually 3 is I want to see a Chris Angel show. I would love to see Zach Bagans' museum.
Whoa.
And
that museum's haunted, bro.
I know. I want to go.
Did you hear about the the basketball player from the Lakers?
No.
They told him, do not touch stuff in here. Keep your hands in your pockets. Well, I guess he picked this thing up and he was being a wise ass with it. And bad luck, he was sick. He couldn't throw a basketball. His feet were hurting. And they actually had to go back. They had to go back and do a seance to get that demon out of it.
And you know what? He still got traded to the Knicks. Anyway, and finally, I want to see the gold and silver pawn shop.
It's nothing what you think it is.
Yeah, I know it's a tiny place.
My wife worked there. It's only about 10 foot wide.
Yeah. I've seen. I'm looking at it. I've seen the layout of it. I know it's not that big because I've worked enough television to say, yeah, that's not a very big place.
No, when you walk and by, you're brushing elbows with people going the other way.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure it's really crowded. But I want a good Vegas buffet.
You gotta go for a good bit. You gotta go to South Point. Yeah. Porterhouse Steaks is on there. Prime rib is on there. $9.99.
Yeah, I'll just put my chair next to the carving station.
Binions has a really good seafood one too. I mean, they got everything on there, but if you like seafood, Binions is the place to go.
Oh yeah. My favorite food is Seconds.
Seconds?
Seconds.
Hey, I go to the Asian buffet and my wife has to go 4 or 5 times because I'm embarrassed to go get the seafood.
Yeah.
She says, "Buy yourself." I'm like, no, go for me. But yeah, if you come to Vegas next time, if you're coming, you got my number, give me a call. I will show you the sites and take you out. And Vegas claims on the road that leads into Pahrump, which is Blue Diamond, they have seen a silverback Bigfoot.
Not surprising. I've heard a couple of mentions of a silverback one.
And Vegas made them take it down off of YouTube. They said they didn't want that being spread around because people won't come to Vegas. Because it's only a mile to Vegas. He would be natural in Vegas. Go to Fremont Street. You know what I'm saying? Crazy. Yes, Steve, I hope I can have you on the show again. It was awesome.
Anytime, brother.
I hope we, answered a lot of questions for people out there. We didn't get to any questions because, we were just involved with you here tonight. But I'd like to have you back on the show again.
Anytime.
Here in Vegas, so definitely you're at the top of the list. And guys, go and see him at these conventions. Go out to these campgrounds. Watch his show. I'm telling you, you will find that you will not be watching these mountain monsters and all these other guys. And it's a great show, and I can't say I'm enough for it. And anything else you want to plug before we shut off?
No, we're all good, brother. And thanks for having me on. It's quite an honor to be on your show, sir.
And sir, anytime I can do something, stay in touch, please.
Roger that.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining the show.
Take care, brother.
Peace.